You know, out of all the reviews, animated movie or television series reviews I've seen from people like Huey Toomore to Rowdy C of TV Trash, Nostalgia Critic, Animat, you name it, one thing I've noticed is they've never talked about one thing in animation. It always seems to happen. Now, not saying live action doesn't do it as well, but it mostly seems to happen more often in animation than anything else. In animation than anything else. And what I'm talking about is that thing that's known as a trope. Now, in case you don't know what a trope is, it's basically a saying for something that occurs constantly or once in a while, if once at all, in any kind of media format. In fact, you even have a website known as TV Tropes that talks about this and categorizes each and every different kind of TV medium that uses this trope in some kind of way. And not just every single medium, but almost every single show or movie that might even have it. So, why is a trope so that's an email right there. But why is a trope so important? And why don't people ever talk about it that much in their reviews? I think because sometimes it's just a one-time deal. Now, sometimes tropes could be just, out of the blue kind of things. Like sometimes you could do the wonderful life trope, as some people might call it, where you basically take the same concept as you saw in It's a Wonderful Life and apply it to your medium. We've seen that in Tiny Toons. We actually saw it in the Goliath Chronicles, I believe, according to what TV Trash said, or Rowdy C of TV Trash said. So we've seen that kind of concept constant times. We've also seen something that's been very popular in any kind of animation and even in live action, but mostly animation. And sometimes, depending on who the animators are or what the television series is, and who the writers and directors are, sometimes this trope can last maybe 1 or 2 episodes, and sometimes it can last a whole season. And that is called the brainwash episode, the mind control trope, if you will, the brainwash trope. In other words, believing you're somebody else, or believing you're somebody else, or you're working for this person, or that you're this or that, and nothing else. And sometimes, like I said, that lasts for maybe an episode or two, maybe three, and sometimes, depending on the writing team, and direction, basically creative team, it'll sometimes last for a whole season. One good example for animation when it comes to lasting a whole season is the Street Fighter animated series that aired on USA. Now, I haven't seen the series that much. All I remember was watching the ending of one episode, and basically it was Bison controlling Cammy, somehow mind controlling Cammy to side with him and be part of Shadowloo. So, yeah, that's what happened. And from what I've read through Wikipedia, Wikipedia and other sites, this lasted for a whole season until the finale of season 1, where she was finally freed and she was brought back to the side of good, as far as I know. Now, this trope has also happened in animes as well, like Yu-Gi-Oh! Mostly if you take a look at season 2 and 3. In season 2, you had Merrick before it was revealed that he was actually being controlled and manipulated by a dark spirit, using his power of the Millennium Rod to control people like Joey, to control people like Taya. So, yeah, he would talk through them. He would use them as puppets, mind control them into doing what he wanted. And you also saw that in the following Waking the Dragon season, when you would have that happen with Mai. Mai would get brainwashed and mind controlled into thinking this is what's really going on, when in fact the truth was being, when in fact she was being lied to. So it's a very popular trope. Rescue Rangers, Chippendale Rescue Rangers have done it. Darkwing Duck has done it. And that's another email there. But they've all done it. Just about every show has done it, as far as I know. Transformers freaking did it. You know, so a lot of the shows that I would grow up with, anybody else grew up with, pretty much had the mind control, brainwash trope in there. And sometimes, like I say, depending on the creative staff, it lasted either a whole season or it just lasted a few episodes. That's about it. Another one would be the possession trope. Now, this is sort of similar in the veins of mind control and brainwash, but more along the lines that someone would actually use a power as some kind of power sometimes to possess somebody else. Sometimes, if the person had the power to go ghost-like, if you will, like let's say in Nickelodeon's Danny Phantom, they could actually go into somebody else and possess them and take control of the body. And sometimes, in the case of let's say like Yu-Gi-Oh, they could put a piece of themselves in there, if not a whole piece, if not a part of a piece of themselves, into the character, like Merrick did with Taya, and control them. This has been done before. This has been done before in some other series. And usually it lasts a few episodes, if not the whole season. Surprisingly, to a lot of fans, Merrick still having a part of himself inside Taya towards the end of the Battle City story arc was kind of surprising. But yet he did. So again, this is not something that's happened before, or not some, now this is something that's not just happened once, but this has happened before, not just in other animes, but in other animation and even live action series. And again, like I said, it's something that lasts maybe a year, basically a season, or just a few episodes. Again, it all depends on the creative staff. Now, another popular one, of course, is the inanimate object transformation, or the inanimate object trope. Now, the inanimate object trope could mean anything. It could basically refer to petrification, or statuification, if you will, where a character is turned into stone, if not temporarily or permanently. And most times in animation, either depending, like I said, again, on the creative staff, it's either just for a few episodes, one episode, or permanently. It all depends. Now, sometimes the permanentness could be basically, if it's from the good guy's side, part of a sacrifice. Sometimes, if it's temporary, it's only because the bad guys did it, and it's going to be for maybe just one episode or a few episodes. That's what happens. And usually it's up to the hero to do what they can to save them. It really is. In fact, there's one cartoon, I can't think of it right now, where a female character, I think she was like a raccoon or a fox or something like that, her name's Vixen or something like that, or Vixie, she gets turned into stone by a Medusa character, and then she's set free later on. So it only lasted not even barely one episode, but it happens. And it's sometimes a temporary deal, or like I said, if the writers call for a sacrifice on the good guy's part, it's a permanent deal. And sometimes, like I said, inanimate object transformation or the inanimate object trope doesn't always have to be, doesn't just rely on those either. Sometimes they can rely on being inanimate objects permanently. Now, we've seen in Sabrina the Teenage Witch, whether it's animation or live action, that the characters have been turned or turned themselves into inanimate objects, if not temporarily, on purpose, or whatever. They've been there. In the live action series, there was an episode where I think it was the grandmother came over, visited, and she turned Hilda, I think it was Zelda or Hilda, into a dry fruit basket. So that happened. You take a look at the animated series. You saw Sabrina turn herself into a plastic flamingo. You saw Zelda and Hilda turn themselves into different things, like a mailbox or whatever. It's happened. So these kind of things are just temporary deals, and Sabrina the Teenage Witch was a good example of it. But again, this has happened in other animation and live action shows, but mostly animated. It has happened, but most of the time it's just a temporary deal. And like I said, sometimes it lasts maybe a few episodes, maybe a season, or just one episode. That's about it. And then, of course, you got the plant transformation trope. That's right, the plant TF trope. Now, this is kind of unique in a sense that, again, same categories. Either it lasts an episode, a few episodes, or a season, all depending on the creative staff. Now, American and Canadian and French animation have done this, including anime has done this. And like I said, it's only been temporary, permanent, temporary for a few episodes, one episode, and sometimes could even be permanent. I'll give you an example. Wakafu, which is based on an RPG game, which has an animated series, lasted for about 2 seasons. And towards the end of the first season, in the episode Mount Zint, a lot of the characters, including Amelia, from what I think that's her name, because of who they are, seedlings or whatever they are, get turned into trees, and either it lasts for that one episode or it lasts going into another episode before they're freed. Because Amelia and the characters that get turned into trees are back to normal when you watch the second season. So basically, it's either for that one episode, which is Mount Zint or something like that, or it's for a few episodes before they're changed back. And I apologize for the bird in the background. But like I said, it's either for a few episodes. I didn't really pay attention, but I think it may have been for a few episodes, maybe in 2 episodes or 1 episode. I don't really know. But that's what that TV trope was. That's what that TV trope was. It was basically something that lasted for about an episode or two. In the Wakafu in the first season, in the final episodes of the first season, from what I understand. Now, it's not just that series either. What was it? Winx Club, which was on 4Kids and now is on Nickelodeon, did this as well. I think it was towards like the second season or whatever. The witches turned one of their own, who was actually going to be a good girl, who was actually one of the good witches, and that's an email right there, was actually one of the good witches, turned her into a pumpkin, and she remained that way for a majority of that season. So it was a temporary deal, but the creative staff said, okay, we're going to have you remain this way for the remainder of the season, or have her remain this way for the remainder of the season. So that's happened, and that was, like I said, for most of that season. You take a look at Toad Patrol. This is a series some people may not know of. Toad Patrol, and they had a trope in there with the plant transformation that was sort of a weakness for the Toads. Basically, if the Toads didn't get to a certain area by nightfall, or they didn't do this, or they didn't get to Toad Hollow or something like that, they would turn into mushrooms. They would. I know it sounds like a crazy concept, but that was basically what it was. They would turn into mushrooms. So, basically, that's what happened with the character. That's what happened to one of the characters. Even though he came on later on and sort of became a love interest for one of the female leads, he sacrificed himself to save the others, and he allowed himself to get turned into a mushroom. So, yeah, that's what happened. And again, it was just a temporary deal. He did switch back towards the end. And like I said, sometimes it's just a temporary deal. Martin Mystery did this as well. He did it. He did it as well. With what with that big, what was it, burly character that hung around Martin and his sister. He did it there. He became a tree. Martin's sister was slowly becoming a tree. Things like that were all happening all around. So, yeah, the plant transformation trope, happened as well, including the monster transformation trope. Sometimes with Martin Mystery, this happened too. In Martin Mystery, sometimes a character, if it's not temporary, got turned into a monster. Whether it was a witch or just an unknown creature, they got turned into it and then they got changed back. So it was only something there, and that was only basically for one episode.